I never thought I would be in this situation. My name is Mark, and I'd like to share my story about betrayal, discovery, and moving on. I was married to Jenna for 5 years. On the surface, we had a typical suburban life, nice house, good jobs, and our little routines that we thought kept us connected. But looking back, I realize I missed the signs. There were cracks in our foundation that I chose to ignore. There were subtle changes in Jenna's behavior over the months leading up to the discovery. She was always on her phone, and I shrugged it off as work-related stress. She worked at a marketing firm and things were busy for her, but the late nights became more frequent. The excuses piled up. "I have a big project," she'd say, or "I need to meet with a client." I wanted to trust her. I think part of me did. But there was a nagging feeling that I couldn't shake. It wasn't until one dreary Wednesday evening that everything came crashing down. I had just gotten home from work when I found a text on her phone that made my heart drop. I was waiting for her to get home, and as I was packing the living room, I saw her phone light up with a message from an unknown number. It read, "Can't wait to see you again, pilot." I froze. I picked up the phone, my hands trembling with anger and disbelief. I knew I shouldn't invade her privacy, but something compelled me to dig deeper. I unlocked her phone. She always kept it unlocked, a sign of trust, I thought, and scrolled through her messages. What I found was a series of flirty exchanges that made my stomach churn. She was having an affair with a pilot named Josh. While I was slaving away at work, she was spending her time with this guy, living a double life. When Jenna walked through the door, I confronted her. I could see the shock on her face, but it quickly morphed into defensiveness. "What are you talking about, Mark?" she said, her voice dripping with disbelief. I showed her the text messages, demanding answers. I'll never forget the look in her eyes. It was a mix of guilt and defiance. Instead of apologizing, she started to spin a web of lies. "It's not what it looks like. He's just a friend. You're overreacting." Her words seemed hollow to me then. I couldn't understand how she thought she could talk her way out of this. I felt a swirl of emotions, rage, sadness, confusion. I wanted to scream, to throw things. But more than anything, I felt like a fool for trusting her. She had manipulated my love and turned it into something unrecognizable, like a thief in the night. After the confrontation, I went for a drive to cool off. I ended up at the park where we used to spend lazy summer afternoons. I sat there, heart heavy, replaying the events in my head. I thought about the life we built together, the dreams we shared, and how quickly they had dissolved into lies. It was hard to breathe. I felt a mix of anger towards her and pity for myself. How did I let it come to this? Days turned into weeks, and I fell into a routine of brooding and avoiding her. I was heartbroken, and the emotional roller coaster left me exhausted. I would lay awake at night, thinking about everything, our past, our future, and what would happen now. The betrayal cut deep, but with every passing day, I began to realize that I needed to make a choice. I couldn't stay in a marriage built on deceit, and I wouldn't let it define me. As I drove home that day, I began envisioning a different future. If Jenna could betray me, then I would reclaim my life. I didn't know what that would look like yet, but I was determined to find out. I was ready to fly past the betrayal she had dealt me, just like that pilot she had betrayed me with. The days that followed my discovery were a blur of anger, sadness, and confusion. I spent hours mulling over the betrayal and wrestling with the decision I needed to make. Jenna walked around the house, pretending as if nothing had happened, while I felt like I was living in a different reality. Each time I glanced at her, I was reminded of the deceit that stained our marriage. It was suffocating. One night, I couldn't take it anymore. I sat down with a notebook and started to jot down my thoughts. I wrote about the good times we had, the vacations, and the laughter. But I quickly turned the page and wrote about the things that didn't sit right, the late nights, the unanswered messages, and the distance that had grown between us. I realized that I had been ignoring my own gut feelings for too long. It wasn't just about the affair. It was about the disconnection that had spiraled into betrayal. I started to think about what I wanted for my life moving forward. I knew I couldn't stay with Jenna. The trust was shattered beyond repair. My dreams of a happy family felt like an illusion, and I had to face the fact that the love we once shared was gone. The thought of separating terrified me, but so did the thought of continuing to live in a lie. There was too much pain, and I didn't want to waste more of my life in a stagnant relationship. As I pondered my options, I decided I needed to talk to someone outside of my situation. I reached out to my best friend, Chris. He had been there through thick and thin, and I knew he would have my back. We met at our favorite bar, a dive with cheap beer and a jukebox that played tunes from our youth. As I sat across from him, I unloaded everything, the affair, the lies, and my pain. He listened intently, nodding in understanding. "Man, I don't know how you've put up with her for so long," Chris said, shaking his head. "You deserve better than this. You can't let her manipulate you into staying. It's time to think about yourself." His words felt liberating. For the first time since the betrayal, I felt a flicker of hope. I realized I had been living my life for Jenna, trying to keep her happy while neglecting my own needs. We talked late into the night, and Chris encouraged me to take control of my life. He suggested I travel, explore the world, and give myself the chance to heal. The idea resonated with me. Traveling seemed like the perfect way to escape the mess that had become my life and rediscover who I was outside of my marriage. I decided to make a plan. The next day, I started researching destinations. I thought about places I always wanted to visit: Paris, Tokyo, and New Zealand. The thought of wandering through new cities, experiencing different cultures, and meeting new people filled me with a sense of excitement I hadn't felt in years. I started saving up money, planning a trip that would take me far away from the betrayal that haunted me. As weeks passed, I slowly distanced myself from Jenna. I avoided late-night conversations and kept my emotions in check. I had become a ghost in my own home, going through the motions while plotting my escape. Jenna seemed oblivious to my growing detachment. She still tried to deny the affair, insisting it was just a fling and that we could work on our marriage, but I was done. I didn't want to fix something that was broken beyond repair. Finally, I decided to confront Jenna one last time. I wanted her to know that I was moving on. It was a Tuesday evening when I sat her down in the living room. The tension was palpable. "Jenna, we need to talk," I said, my voice steady. "I can't pretend anymore. I know about you and Josh. I can't stay in this relationship. It's over." Her reaction was predictable. She flipped out, launching into a tirade of accusations about how I was being unreasonable. "I can't believe you're throwing away everything we built over a stupid mistake," she yelled, her face flushed with anger. "You're being dramatic." I took a deep breath, trying to remain calm. "Dramatic? This isn't drama, Jenna. This is reality. You chose to betray me, and I refuse to live in your shadow anymore. I've made up my mind." The confrontation escalated. She cried, pleaded, and tried to manipulate me into reconsidering. But the rage I had felt initially had transformed into something else: resolve. I was ready to reclaim my life. I had no interest in her excuses or her attempts to play the victim. I felt a mixture of sadness and relief as I watched the illusion of our life crumble. That night, I began packing my bags. I didn't know where I would go, but I didn't care. I was ready to leave everything behind: the pain, the betrayal, and the memories. I was ready to travel, to fly past the hurt and find a new beginning. The world was out there waiting for me, and I intended to embrace it wholeheartedly. After the confrontation with Jenna, I felt a strange sense of liberation wash over me. I knew that leaving her was the right decision, but I also understood that the road ahead wouldn't be easy. I packed my things that night, filling suitcase after suitcase with a mix of clothes and essentials, all while trying to ignore the pangs of guilt and sadness lodged in my chest. It was hard to say goodbye to the life I had envisioned, but I was determined to step into the unknown. In the following days, I secured my travel plans. I bought a one-way ticket to Paris, a city I had always dreamt of visiting. The thought of wandering through its streets, sipping coffee in quaint cafes, and soaking in the art and history filled me with excitement. It was a chance to break free from the trauma and pain Jenna had inflicted on me. With every new plan I made, I felt a little more empowered. But I wasn't just leaving physically, I was also leaving emotionally. I decided to cut off any remaining ties with Jenna. I knew that if I allowed her back into my life, I would risk falling back into the cycle of manipulation and regret. The last thing I wanted was to be pulled back into the darkness she had created. So I blocked her on all social media and deleted her number from my phone. It felt both liberating and terrifying. The morning of my departure, I woke up early to collect my thoughts. I found myself staring at the empty house we had shared. The walls felt like they were closing in, echoing memories that now felt tainted. I took a deep breath, reminding myself that this was the start of a new chapter. As I loaded my suitcase into the trunk of my car, I felt a mix of nerves and excitement coursing through my veins. The drive to the airport was surreal. My heart raced as I navigated familiar streets, but this time, I was heading towards something new: freedom. I arrived at the airport with time to spare and checked in for my flight. As I moved through security, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was leaving a part of myself behind. But that part was marked by betrayal and lies, and I realized how desperately I wanted to break free. Once I boarded the plane, I settled into my seat and glanced out the window. As the plane taxied down the runway, I felt a wave of emotion wash over me. I was leaving behind more than just a physical location. I was shedding the weight of betrayal, disappointment, and heartache. The moment the plane took off and soared into the sky, I felt like I was rising above it all. I was finally escaping the life that had become suffocating. Upon landing in Paris, I was greeted by a cool breeze and the intoxicating scent of freshly baked bread wafting from nearby boulangeries. I stepped off the plane with a sense of wonder and anticipation. Everything felt vibrant and alive. I checked into my hotel, dropped off my luggage, and quickly ventured out to explore the city. I wandered through the narrow streets, marveling at the architecture and feeling the energy of the people around me. As I strolled down the Champs-Élysées, I found myself smiling for the first time in weeks. I made my way to a small cafe and ordered a croissant and a café au lait. The flavors burst in my mouth, and I felt a sense of joy I hadn't experienced in such a long time. It was as if the city was welcoming me with open arms, offering a fresh start. I spent the next few days wandering from one landmark to the next, visiting the Louvre, soaking in the beauty of the Eiffel Tower, and getting lost in the charm of Montmartre. Each new experience rekindled a part of me that had been dormant for far too long. I reveled in the freedom of being on my own, unburdened by the weight of a crumbling marriage. One evening, while sitting on a bench overlooking the Seine River, I reflected on everything that had happened. The pain of Jenna's betrayal still lingered, but I felt myself healing. I realized that this journey wasn't just about escaping my past. It was about rediscovering who I was. I had spent so long trying to make things work with someone who didn't value me, and now it was time to prioritize myself. As I sat there watching the sun dip below the horizon, casting a golden hue over the water, I made a vow to myself. I promised that I would never allow anyone to make me feel less than I deserve again. I would embrace every opportunity, every adventure that came my way. This was a turning point in my life, and I was ready to embrace it fully. Over the next few weeks, I continued to travel across Europe, visiting cities like Rome, Berlin, and London. Each place brought new adventures, new people, and new experiences that pushed me out of my comfort zone. I tried new foods, met travelers from all walks of life, and even tried my hand at speaking the languages, though my attempts often resulted in laughter. I felt alive again, and with each passing day, the memories of Jenna faded into the background. Still, there were moments of loneliness. I wondered how things might have turned out differently if our marriage had been stronger, but I knew that dwelling on the past wouldn't help me. I had to stay focused on my journey, both physically and emotionally. I was becoming the person I was always meant to be, and it felt incredible. I finally found myself in a place where I could reflect on everything I had learned. This wasn't just a trip, it was a journey of self-discovery. I was ready to move forward, to fully embrace my new identity. I had escaped the shadows of betrayal, and I was determined to let the light in. As I continued my travels through Europe, I found solace in the unexpected moments of joy that came my way. Meeting new people became a regular part of my journey, and I began to appreciate the stories of others who had faced their own struggles. During my stay in Rome, I met Sarah, an artist from New York who had also taken time off to travel after a difficult breakup. We bonded over our shared experiences and spent hours discussing our lives, dreams, and the lessons we had learned through heartbreak. Sarah had this infectious energy about her. She was unapologetically herself, which inspired me to open up more than I had in a long time. Our conversations felt refreshing, like a breath of fresh air amid the chaos that had defined my life back home. We explored the city together, visiting the Colosseum, tossing coins into the Trevi Fountain, and indulging in gelato that melted on our tongues. For the first time since leaving Jenna, I felt a connection with someone that was genuine and free of the baggage I had carried for so long. One evening, as we sat on the steps of the Spanish Steps watching the world go by, Sarah turned to me and said, "It's amazing to see how far you've come. You left everything behind and are now exploring the world. It takes a lot of courage to start over." Her words struck a chord deep within me. I had taken that leap of faith and it was paying off in unexpected ways. I was no longer that man defined by his marriage to Jenna. I was becoming someone new, someone stronger, wiser, and more resilient. I could feel the burden of my past slowly lifting, replaced by a newfound sense of purpose. As our time in Rome came to an end, I realized how much I had grown since I first boarded that flight to Paris. The heartache had morphed into a powerful driving force, pushing me to embrace life with an open heart. Sarah and I exchanged contact information, promising to keep in touch. It was bittersweet to say goodbye, but I knew our paths had crossed for a reason. With renewed energy, I continued my journey through Europe, each destination reinforcing the lessons I had learned along the way. I traveled to Barcelona, where I wandered through the whimsical architecture of Antoni Gaudí, and then to Amsterdam, where I found inspiration in the city's vibrant art scene. Each new place unfolded like a chapter in a book I was writing for myself, one filled with resilience, adventure, and self-discovery. But as the weeks turned into months, I began to notice the fleeting nature of my travels. I had built a life of spontaneity and freedom, yet a part of me yearned for something more permanent. I found myself contemplating what it would mean to settle down again, to build connections that went deeper than a shared moment in a foreign city. One evening, while sitting in a cafe in Prague, I struck up a conversation with a fellow traveler named Liam. He had a similar story of heartbreak and renewal. As we swapped stories over coffee, he mentioned something that resonated with me. We often forget that healing doesn't just happen on the road. It's about the connections we make and the community we choose to create. That struck a chord. I had spent so much time focusing on my own healing that I hadn't considered how important it was to build a support network. It was time to find my own place in this world, one where I could embrace new experiences while also nurturing the connections I had formed. I realized that I didn't have to face my past alone. There was a whole world of people who had navigated similar heartbreaks, and together we could support one another. As my travels continued, I wondered about how to create that sense of belonging. I started to think about moving back to the US but in a new city, somewhere fresh that could inspire new beginnings. Friends often told me about Austin, Texas, and its vibrant culture, art scene, and welcoming atmosphere. I began to research the city, imagining how it would feel to carve out a new life for myself there, one where I could continue to grow and explore while being surrounded by a supportive community. Eventually, the thought of returning home began to fill me with excitement rather than dread. I knew that I could still carry the lessons of my travels with me, while also embracing the possibility of new friendships and experiences. I wasn't running back to my old life. I was stepping into a new chapter, and that felt empowering. I made the decision to book my flight back to the States, but not without one last adventure in Europe. I decided to spend some time in Lisbon, soaking up the sunshine and vibrant culture before heading home. As I wandered through the streets, I felt a sense of closure wash over me. I had traveled far and faced my demons, and now I was ready to embrace the next phase of my journey. The morning of my return to the US filled me with mixed emotions. I stood on the balcony of my hotel, watching the sun rise over the Atlantic Ocean, and reflected on how far I had come. The pain of betrayal had transformed into a catalyst for growth. I had discovered a strength within myself that I never knew existed. I felt grateful for the experiences that had led me to this moment. As I boarded the flight back home, I carried with me a sense of hope and excitement. I was leaving behind the remnants of a painful past, but I was taking with me the lessons learned, the friendships forged, and the promise of a brighter future. I was ready to embrace whatever lay ahead, knowing that I had the ability to shape my own destiny. I was not defined by Jenna's betrayal. I was defined by the choices I made moving forward. I knew that my journey wasn't over. It was just beginning. Arriving back in the U.S. was a surreal experience. Stepping off the plane, the familiar sounds, sights, and smells of home flooded back. But this time, it felt different. I was no longer the same Mark who had left. I was now a man transformed by his experiences, ready to carve out a new life for myself. I took a deep breath as I walked through the airport terminal, feeling a mix of excitement and nervousness about what awaited me. I had decided to move to Austin, Texas, a city known for its vibrant culture, music scene, and outdoor activities. I had booked a small apartment in a lively neighborhood that was close to restaurants, parks, and local art galleries. It felt like the perfect place to start over and find the community I had been longing for. I had even joined a few social media groups to connect with locals before my arrival, eager to make new friends. The first few weeks in Austin were filled with exploration. I spent my days wandering the streets, visiting local shops, and trying out different food trucks that seemed to pop up on every corner. The atmosphere was electric. I found myself falling in love with the city's charm. The eclectic mix of music, art, and food made it feel alive and vibrant. I reveled in the freedom of being a part of something new and exciting. One evening, I attended a local art walk, an event where artists showcased their work in galleries and on the streets. I strolled through the galleries, captivated by the creativity that surrounded me. I even struck up conversations with other attendees, sharing stories about my travels and the journey that had brought me to Austin. It felt good to connect with people who were just as enthusiastic about art and life as I was. It was at this event that I met Emma, a graphic designer and fellow art lover. We quickly hit it off, bonding over our mutual love for travel and exploration. Emma had her own story of heartbreak. She had recently moved to Austin after leaving a long-term relationship behind. We spent the evening sharing our experiences and laughing about the ridiculousness of our pasts. I felt a spark of connection with her that I hadn't felt in a long time. As we continued to see each other over the next few weeks, I realized how important it was to have someone beside me who understood the journey of moving on. Emma was supportive and encouraging, and I loved how we could talk about our lives openly. We would explore the city together, go to concerts, and try new restaurants. Each moment felt like a new adventure, and I found myself genuinely smiling again. But as I grew closer to Emma, I also faced moments of vulnerability. There were times when I felt the weight of my past creeping back in, insecurities bubbling to the surface. I would catch myself overthinking things, fearing that I might repeat the mistakes of my previous relationship. I knew I needed to address these feelings head-on if I wanted to build a healthy connection with her. One night, while sitting on Emma's porch with a bottle of wine, I decided to open up. "Can I be honest with you about something?" I asked, my heart racing. "I've been through a lot in my past, and sometimes I worry that I'll mess things up again. I don't want to sabotage what we have." Emma looked at me with understanding eyes, and I could see that she appreciated my honesty. "You don't have to worry about that, Mark. We're both starting fresh, and it's okay to be scared. Just be open with me, and we can figure it out together." Her words reassured me, and I felt a sense of relief wash over me. I knew that embracing vulnerability was a part of healing, and it was a step I was willing to take. As the weeks turned into months, I found myself falling for Emma. She brought laughter and lightness back into my life, and together we created new memories, free from the weight of our pasts. I couldn't help but think about how far I had come. I had transformed from a man defined by betrayal into someone who was ready to embrace love and connection once again. It was during a camping trip we took to the beautiful Texas Hill Country that I understood the depth of my feelings for her. We sat by the campfire, roasting marshmallows and watching the stars twinkle above us. As I looked at her, I realized that I wanted to share my life with her. Emma was not just a reprieve from my past. She was a symbol of the new beginnings I had fought so hard to create. With the flames flickering between us, I took a deep breath and confessed, "I really like you, Emma, more than I thought I would, and I want to see where this goes." Her eyes lit up and she smiled. "I feel the same way, Mark. I'm glad you said something." In that moment, I felt a sense of hope for the future. I had finally found a connection built on honesty, support, and mutual understanding. It wasn't about rushing into something. It was about taking the time we needed to build a foundation that honored both of our journeys. As our relationship grew, I began to reflect on everything I had learned since leaving Jenna. I realized that the pain of betrayal had not only spurred my travel, but it had also pushed me to confront my own vulnerabilities and desires. I had learned to prioritize my own happiness and to surround myself with people who uplifted me. I took a moment to think about the next steps in my journey. I was no longer just running from my past. I was building a future filled with possibilities. I knew that I wanted to take my time, to savor each moment, and to learn from the experiences that had shaped me. As I settled into my new life in Austin, I felt a sense of peace I hadn't experienced in years. I was ready to embrace whatever the future held, knowing that I had the strength to face it head-on. I was not the man I was before. I had grown and evolved, and I was excited to see how that would unfold in my life with Emma by my side. I was no longer just moving on. I was moving forward. As the months passed, my life in Austin continued to blossom in ways I never imagined possible. I settled into my new job, got involved in local volunteer opportunities, and found a rhythm that felt both rewarding and fulfilling. I was finally able to merge my love for creativity with my career, which added a layer of joy to my daily life. Emma and I became each other's anchors, supporting one another as we navigated our individual journeys of healing. We shared everything, from our hopes and dreams to our fears and insecurities. I appreciated the way she encouraged me to pursue my passions, whether it was photography, writing, or exploring new places. With her support, I even decided to delve deeper into photography, capturing the beauty of our adventures together. One particularly memorable moment was our trip to the Texas coast. We spent a weekend camping on the beach, marveling at the vastness of the ocean and the beauty of the sunset. That night, as we walked along the shore, the moonlight shimmering on the water, I felt a sense of serenity enveloping us. We sat on the sand, the sound of the waves calming our thoughts, and I turned to her. "Can I tell you something?" I asked, feeling the weight of the moment. "Of course," she replied, wrapping her arms around her knees and looking at me with curiosity. "I never thought I could feel this way again after everything that happened with Jenna. But you've shown me what it really means to be loved for who I am. You make me feel free, and I just want you to know how much you mean to me." Emma smiled, her eyes sparkling. "You've shown me that it's okay to open my heart again, too. I feel lucky to have you in my life. We've both been through so much, and I think that makes what we have even more special." At that moment, I realized how far I had come, not just in my journey of healing, but in my ability to embrace love again. I wasn't just moving forward, I was thriving. I had created a life that was meaningful, built on trust and respect, where both Emma and I could grow together. As the seasons changed, so did our relationship. We celebrated milestones, shared laughter over silly moments, and supported each other through life's challenges. We visited art shows, explored new hikes, and cooked dinner together, each small moment adding a layer to the foundation we were building. I felt a sense of peace wash over me, knowing I had finally found a partner who understood and valued me. One Sunday morning, as we sat on the patio sipping our coffee, I noticed the way the sunlight danced around Emma's face. I felt a surge of gratitude and contentment, and I knew it was time to take another step forward. I reached for her hand, and she looked at me, a mix of curiosity and affection in her eyes. "Emma," I began, my heart racing a bit. "I know we've both been through a lot, but I want to build a future with you. I want to experience life together, to support each other, to share everything that comes our way. Would you consider it?" Her expression softened and she squeezed my hand. "Are you asking me to be your partner in this journey together?" "Yes," I said, feeling a wave of emotion wash over me. "I want to commit to you, to us. You've changed my life for the better, and I can't imagine my future without you in it." With tears in her eyes, she smiled brightly. "Yes, I want that too, Mark. I'm so grateful for everything we've shared, and I can't wait to see what's next." In that moment, I felt a profound sense of happiness flood through me. The shadows of my past, of betrayal, pain, and heartache, felt like distant memories, replaced by a vibrant future filled with love and possibility. I had overcome so much and emerged stronger on the other side. Reflecting on my journey, I realized that while Jenna's betrayal had once shattered my world, it had also propelled me toward a life I never knew I wanted. I learned that healing takes time, that it's okay to be vulnerable, and that true love is built on honesty, respect, and mutual support. I had reclaimed my life and reshaped it into something beautiful. As I looked at Emma, my heart full of hope, I understood that this was not just a new chapter. It was the beginning of a beautiful story we would write together. We were two souls, once broken, now united in our pursuit of happiness. I was ready to embrace each adventure, hand in hand, knowing that together we could weather any storm. This was my life now, a life rebuilt on trust, love, and the promise of a brighter tomorrow.